Yeah, we are live. Good day, everyone. Welcome once again to the Learn a Thing series. My name is Mustafa, and with me here is Tobi Anifowose. Today, we are going to be talking about PHP Sandbox. Yeah. So the platform and the entire concept of what we are going to be discussing today promises to be interesting. Um, Toby is a backend engineer at PHP Sandbox. He would get to introduce himself much more into the session. Say hi, Toby. Let's our audience get to meet you.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Anifowose Tobi, and I am building PHP Sandbox alongside with Bosun, who is the founder, and Mercy, who is also a co-founder. And it's nice being here today, and I really look forward to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right. PHP Sandbox is an online coding platform editor, um, and over the past years, it has had about 20,000 users and over 100,000 notebooks created. Um, can you start by sharing with us how you guys have been able to do this? It seems, how many people are on the team first? Let's start from there. Seems you guys have a very interesting way of executing to achieve a lot of stuff so far.
All right, so the core team, who are basically the three co-founders, includes myself, Bosun, and Mercy. So we form the core team. However, we have other team members as well. We have a designer, we have a DevOps engineer, and we also have another front end person. So yeah, that's just the team.
Oh, okay. So, how has been the experience building for the entire PHP community? And what kind of reception have you guys gotten so far?
So the whole idea of PHP Sandbox started when Bosun. So myself and Bosun studied together in the university. Um, we're in the same department. So I recall then Bosun was working on a library for Paystack and was trying to demo the library to make people understand how it works and all of that, right? And while we had the likes of, um, Code Sandbox and some of those other great platforms out there, there was nothing on in the PHP community that could, be used for that purpose. Yeah, well, we have online editors for PHP, but you couldn't make use of your composer dependencies. The support was very, very basic, right? So Boston started working on it back then. Did something very small and posted it on Reddit after working on it for some months. And you know how Reddit is, it was both good and bad. And yeah, it was, I don't know, me, I was discouraged. I wasn't working on PHP Sandbox as at then. So I felt some of the comments there were enough to discourage. But then he continued working on it. And uh, the name started as Ciroue, Ciroue. I guess Boson is the only one that knows the pronunciation. So then we later evolved to PHP Sandbox, and we released the first stable version sometime around 2020, and that really brought in a lot of users. And around 2021, we released another version, which is something close to what we have today. And we've had a lot of positive feedbacks from the community. We have a Discord channel. Currently, one of the biggest libraries in PHP, Carbon, which is used to manage date time, they currently run their documentation on PHP Sandbox.
Wow.
And yeah, so and there are already talks with some other maintainers. We've had a lot of very, very, well-known developers in the PHP community reach out to us looking for ways to collaborate. We have, if you check Twitter recently, there's this guy, I've forgotten his name now, but then used PHP Sandbox for one of his courses online. And so we've had a lot of acceptance, and we just want to keep growing and providing the solution we are working on to the community. There's currently nothing like this in the PHP community.
Yeah, I think that's the fascinating part of it. That it's a niche that you guys are solving, and we are finding a lot of people that are using it. So, which now leads me to the next question, and that is, what is the typical use case for people on the platform? Or what's the average use case?
Okay, actually, there are a whole lot of use case for it. I will start with the basic use case, which led to the creation of PHP Sandbox itself, which is that open source creators need a way to, you know, um, let people quickly test out their packages, their libraries, right? As an open source creator, I want people to, I don't have to pull a composer library, then test it out in a project just to have an idea of how it works. Does it solve my problem and all of that? So you can easily, do that on PHP Sandbox. Oh, you want to report a bug, right? How are we sure that it is not your local environment that is responsible for that bug, right? So PHP Sandbox is like a neutral ground, right? If it is a bug on PHP Sandbox, then most likely it is actually a bug and not because of your local environment. We've also had instructors use PHP Sandbox with their students, and that's an area where we are really, really working this quarter to ensure that we had more features for that. But we've had schools, use PHP Sandbox. Many of them. Currently, we released our premium plan, and that is because many people were clamoring for it, right? They needed features that could only be available on the premium plan. So we've had instructors make use of it. We've had course creators make use of it, and we've also asked the open source. In fact, recently we created a separate application called Play. So you find it on play.phpsandbox.com. So specifically for open source, maintainers, and so we have a whole lot of use cases, and we are consistently adding more and more. There are even some that you'll be getting to know shortly, maybe most likely during the second quarter of this year. So I'll just not say now. But those are the use cases we have so far. We had, we actually had a student who reached out to us and was like, hey, I'm going to be using PHP Sandbox for my project defense in school in the United States. And I hope I'm safe and all of that. And I'm like, yeah, of course. I mean, you've been a regular user for how many months? So we've had students even use it for project defense.
Yeah, this seems like a very interesting part. I particularly have like two particular interests in what you have said right now. One is the fact that it's being used for code samples, documentation reasons. I've had experiences and struggling with that kind of thing. And then the second part is it being used in the edtech space, teacher student relationship, right?
Yeah.
So what's the package like for a school, for a typical school, for a coding schools, right? That's where we are looking at here. So what's the package like for typical coding schools? What does it look like for them?
All right. So when we started working on PHP Sandbox, our focus was just on open source, right? The open
Yeah,
source maintainers and all of that. Which, when we discovered that okay, it was going beyond that, we had to create play, right? Just to ensure that okay, yeah, we are still sticking to the goal. Right. So we ourselves were not really sure of how users were going to use it. So, but from feedbacks we get from our users, that's when we got to know that oh, we have a couple of people from the edtech space using it. So currently the support on the platform for it is still quite basic, right? As an instructor, you can give an assignment on PHP Sandbox. Your students can fork the notebook, and they have a copy of the assignment, and they can do it and all of that. So, however, by the second quarter of this year, you will see a whole lot of massive features that will be coming into the edtech space, particularly. because we are now having, a growing demand for it already, right? So, but currently the support for it is basic. You can create a notebook, and your students can fork the notebook. They can share their solutions with you as their teacher, and they can invite you to join the notebook. You can assess what they've done. You can edit, leave comments, and things like that. So those are currently the basic features we have for EdTech. But then by the second quarter of this year, you'll be seeing a whole lot more. Let me just stop there.
Those features that you have mentioned are not so basic anymore, because that is essentially learning management system on its own, like that, right? So yeah, that gives a very exciting future to the part of um, the entire system that is being built. So before we continue in that discussion, let's take a step back a bit and look at, you were mentioning open source and how this works. So currently, the setup of PHP Sandbox, is it set up as a private entity, private company, open source, public can contribute? What does that look like?
So we have some part of PHP Sandbox that is open source, right? While we have some others that are, that belongs to a private entity, right? So that is currently the structure that we have. And when we started out, we thought, okay, maybe we should just make this whole thing open source. Um, but then, taking a cue from and lessons from other, especially Code Sandbox and Stackbleed and some other, we saw the need, right, to have a private entity, right? But then we still have some of our repositories that are open source. Anybody can contribute. So an example is PHP Sandbox CLI, right, which is a way to interact with PHP Sandbox from your command line, right? So that's an open source repository, right? You can contribute to it if you feel there's a feature you need to add and all of that. And we are also working on some other open source projects, which will be released shortly.
Yeah, very interesting. All right. So another, let's say, meta question now,
All
and
right.
that is PHP Sandbox. What is it built with? What are the tech stack?
PHP. It's built with PHP. And that's a subject that many people will be like, are you serious? Like, are you serious? PHP is very powerful. So our tech is majorly Laravel. We build essentially on Laravel, and we make use of Inertia.js, Vue.js, and we make use of React PHP. React PHP is um, a PHP library that supports event-driven applications, right? So we have that, and yeah, we use TypeScript um, with our Vue.js, and then we have all the DevOps things. So, but that's our basic tech stack.
Nice. All right. So how have you been able to get to the point of having, so how many users do we have right now? As at my last check, I was thinking it was 10,000. Then you mentioned it was 20. So how many are we looking at as at early 2023? Yes. Let's say early
Uh,
23. How many are we on?
so for me, right, I just count them in tens of thousands. So for now,
Okay.
I'll say, well, we have well over 20,000 currently, right?
Okay.
Not up to 30,000, but we have well over 20,000 currently.
Okay. Can you now walk us through some of the features of this entire platform and how somebody can get started using it? I can see some interesting stuff here already. Do you want to do a demo? Share your screen.
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay. Let me.
All right. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. So this a user's dashboard. This is my account, and so I can go ahead to create a notebook. So a notebook is just a project. We call it notebook here.
Yeah.
So you can choose to create an interactive notebook. Interactive notebooks are more like, say, you're interacting with a CLI, basically, and you can choose a Laravel notebook. So we currently have support for some PHP frameworks out of the box, such as Laravel, Symfony, Lumen, Slim, React PHP, and we are adding more. While standard is your basic, uh, you know, just a basic PHP project. So I'll create a Laravel 10 notebook. All right, so this is my notebook, and it's up here. I can decide to click on this to have my preview on a full tab. And so there are lots of things I can do here, but this basically are my notebook information. This is my notebook name. I can change the name if I want to. This just tells me the type of notebook, how many people have seen this notebook, because this is currently a public notebook. Although I can also create a private notebook if I want to. And this is the number of people that have forked this notebook from here, right? So you can fork this notebook. Say you want to try out something you saw there or something, you can fork it, create a copy for yourself, and go ahead and do whatever you want to do. I can also share this notebook with someone, right? I can download it, right? And if I also want to say, for instance, this notebook contains a library documentation, and I want to include PHP Sandbox in the documentation, right? I can easily embed PHP Sandbox in the documentation. And when I embed it, it's going to present the user a full a full PHP Sandbox project in the documentation, right? So right from your documentation, just like we have for Carbon, your users can even start trying out interesting things from your documentation. And we have the Sandbox CLI if you want to import this project to your local environment, right? And so that's basically what you have here. Now, on the sidebar here, you have your file explorer. You can see all my files here. I can make modifications. So this is Laravel's basic route file. I would just say hello world. And all right, cool. All right, so and I have my page updated. So I have all my basic file system here. I can refresh it if I want to. I can add new files. So say for instance, I want to add a new file here. I can go ahead and add a new file. And one of the interesting things we have on PHP Sandbox are your packages, right? There's currently no online coding environment for PHP that supports this. So you can work with any composer package that you want to. Say, for instance, I want to add a new package to this project. I can easily click on that button there, and I can add whatever I want to add. So say, for instance, I want to add, say I want to add a Laravel um, package, say Sparty's Laravel permission. I can just go ahead and install it, and it has been successfully installed into this project. And I can go ahead and use it for whatever I want to do, you know. And this happens so fast. If I want to do it locally, it will probably take me some time, and I will just have something on my PC that I probably, wouldn't be using really. So you can go ahead and view the logs, or you can come back here to uh, select any other package that you want to, and you can see your package list has been updated here. You can remove it if you want to, you can update it and do whatever you want with it. And we have been able to help you sort your main dependencies from your dev dependencies so that, at a glance, you have an idea of how your project dependencies look like. Another really interesting thing are your configurations, right? So in my projects, I can set environmental variables. I believe programmers are familiar with environmental variables, and there are things we use every now and then, right? So I can add a new environmental variable here. And so say I had a new variable custom config. I would say my custom config. And I can mark it as required. So when I mark it as required, if anyone is forking this notebook, it tells the person that, oh, there's a required environmental variable that you have to set, for you to use this notebook. Else, maybe the notebook, the code in the notebook can throw an error or something. And I can go ahead and add. Now, this would automatically restart my notebook for me to make use of it. And once the notebook is restarted, I can go ahead and just use it. Custom config, and I can go ahead and use the environmental variable here, right? So we have the environmental variables. You can also easily switch PHP versions. So currently we have support for PHP 7.4, 8.0, 8.1, and 8.2. So by default, all our notebooks currently run on PHP 8.2, but then you can switch to whatever PHP version works for your project. And another interesting thing is that from your terminal, right? So say from my terminal, this is a Laravel project. So let's assume I'm running something like, say, Laravel WebSocket or say Laravel Octane. Now, these are processes that requires to be run on a port, right? So say your notebook, for example, start running any of those processes on a particular port. So let me start a new process. I'll say PHP serve localhost 7 port 3000. So I have started running. So you can see that PHP Sandbox automatically detects that I'm using a port here. Now there's no point in having that port if you can't tunnel internet connection to that port, right? So and we automatically had a tunneling here, right? So whatever is accessible on this port is exposed to the internet over this URL. And if you click on this, you can actually access whatever it is. However, of course, nothing is there, so it would return an error. Because I'm not serving from any, there's no index.php file at the base here, right? So, but that's the idea. So if you are running WebSocket, it just shows up here. If you are running Octane, it shows up here. So we already have support for all of those kind of projects already. And you can also, easily export your project to GitHub or even import your project from GitHub, right? So here is, so I can import one of my open source libraries, Laravel OTP, and I can import this from GitHub to PHP Sandbox, and I can continue. Actually, I built this library, Laravel OTP, on PHP Sandbox, right? I built the entire library on PHP Sandbox, and it was really, really nice doing that. And we are working hard to really improve, the user's experience, the IDE. We are working hard to improve the experience. But then, yeah, we have projects being built on PHP Sandbox. Yeah, you can restart your notebook. You want to dump auto load and all of that. Then you have your terminal here. I mean, you would have seen me use it earlier. So this is pretty much like your local environment terminal where you can play around with whatever you want to play around with. And all logs from your notebooks are also logged here as well. So those are the basic features that we have currently. on PHP Sandbox. Probably there are some I might have missed, but then those are the basic features that we have. But then we have our premium plan. If you're a premium user, you have your notebook has higher compute resource. You have more RAM, more CPU, more storage, and yeah, I think I'll just stop here for questions.
Thank you very much. I think you have discussed a lot about what this conversation looks like and what the application looks like in itself. Um, it's very interesting, and I'm trying to look at this with respect to my experience with other online editors, Glitch, etc. like that. This seems like a pretty robust environment already with the stuff that you have, right? So first, the thing that I want to ask now is what does the infrastructure, not necessarily the coding, like the infrastructure that powers this, the DevOps stuff, how does that look like currently? That you are able to power all this for all your users, and considering the fact that people who create these notebooks may not no longer maintain them. How do you keep those relevant for them to come back to 6 months' time, 12 months' time to still be able to access them?
All right. Honestly, I can't start explaining the details of how the infrastructure works because, trust me, it is complex. It is really complex. But then, the team just have to figure out ways to solve problems because we face engineering challenges with this every time, and we just have to figure out ways to solve them. So, but basically, we currently have a sort of more like a distributed, system setup, such that PHP Sandbox can run anywhere. And currently, it runs on more than one server currently, right? To ensure that we're able to, serve all our users without having any form of downtime due to what they also use it to do, right? So we currently have a distributed system. I think I mentioned our stack earlier, and yeah, we are also using running on AWS, so we leverage a lot of AWS services, RDS, their database system, SQS, their queues system. We make use of CloudWatch. Yeah, we make use of a lot of AWS, services. So that simplifies the process of thinking of solutions, for us. So it greatly simplifies it for us. And
All right.
yeah, then
Uh,
we also
Sorry. Someone
okay.
is asking um, if it's possible to change a notebook visibility from public to private and vice versa,
Absolutely, it's very much possible. Although that is only available on the premium plan. So if you're
right?
a premium user, you can create private notebooks or change your public notebooks to private. So by default, all notebooks are public, right? But then if you're a premium user, you can create private notebooks.
So adding to that, in the case of using PHP Sandbox for live demo sessions at conferences, and if I'm building the session, I want the audience to immediately play around with what I am building or to probably add to the piece of code to essentially interaction. Um, is that currently possible?
So that is not currently possible. So,
Oh,
but
okay.
that is one of the things that remote collaboration, that's one of the things that we are actively working on. So already you can add users to your notebooks, right? So that even though your notebook is private, you can have other people also have access to that particular notebook. So the next step from there will just be collaboration.
Yeah. Collaboration, the real-time collaboration, etc. like that. Wow, you guys are building an amazing platform. And honestly, the step from what you have built currently to having a full-blown editor, I think you already have that. Is I'm just looking at the amount of work you guys have put into this, and it's really amazing how much knowledge has gone down that train. Can you share some of the experiences building this? What has stood out, or what at what point? What are some things that have stood out in the development of this platform?
So, well, there's a lot, really. I think I'll just look for one that I can
Tell me a
pick.
funny story.
Okay, so you asked earlier about how do we handle users that maybe just use a notebook and they just use it for a day and they don't use it again, right? And how do we manage such notebooks, right? Now, initially, we store users' notebooks, right? We have a backup of their notebooks on a MySQL database, right? So we store your entire content in a MySQL database. And, that was like, a very safe option, right? Nothing will happen to your content there, right? And if you need it back, we just pull it out for you and we give it to you and all of that. So there was a day like that. I was trying to add a new column to that table. And I just noticed that my CI was neither failing or passing. It was just hanging for almost about 15 minutes. And I was wondering what's going on. I checked and I saw that this thing is just hanging when it got to migration and nothing is happening from here. Next thing I was going to see, a user sent us a notification. PHP Sandbox is down. What? So Bosu got in touch with me. I was like, Bosu, what's happening? I said, this PR you approved now. I closed the PR and the migration was running and it got stuck. That was when it occurred to us that okay, we are dealing with a very large table here, right? It never occurred to us before that we have a lot of notebooks and projects created on PHP Sandbox already. So that had to change how we think about so many things, right? That had to change how we think about so many things. And that particular experience led to something else that Bosun worked on, which was he started drawing costs because we are a self-funded team, and right, and we started considering, okay, storing this notebook content in a MySQL database, what's the cost implication, right? And when we started comparing the cost implication, we discovered that wow, if we made use of S3 buckets, right, it would be significantly cheaper than storing them, in a database. And then we felt okay, but then having it in S3 also would in S3 bucket would also be a bit more complicated, right? Because the whole process, I mean, MySQL just pull it. Laravel handles all the this thing for just use a model get and you get it. But then S3 bucket, you have to start, going through a lot of processes and all of that. But then when we consider the cost implication, we felt all right, there was at that point there was like no other choice. We just had to shift our implementation to use S3 bucket. Right now, that required us, for instance, to rewrite the entire to write a custom storage component, a storage library that is compatible with Laravel's own. Right, we had to rewrite our own to that work seamlessly with Laravel, because the way we now set it up is Laravel's this storage library would not work perfectly the way we want it to, right? And then we also have some other environments, right, that are not exactly working exactly the same way, right? So we also have to ensure that we have a way to ensure that the storage library works, detects the environment, and works seamlessly across all of those environments and gives us consistently the same result. So yeah, that's one of the many experiences that has come with building this, and there are a whole lot more. I remember there was a time when one of us made a commit, and that commit did something. We didn't see that coming, and the person pushed a fix to the commit, and the commit message was blood of Jesus. So when I saw, someone push a commit with a commit blood of Jesus, I knew something was going on there. And but yeah, but it's been a very wonderful experience, right? It's been an opportunity to learn, right? Learning a whole lot, right? Many times you discover that, oh, this thing won't work perfectly for us, we have to rewrite it. So our notebook, we currently tunnel your notebook via a popular um, PHP library called Expose, right? Expose PHP. And but then when we started, I would discover that, okay, even this guy is very amazing, but then it won't give us the exact results that we want, right? And we had to start writing some of the components there, using some of our own custom classes to replace some of the inbuilt classes in the libraries, just to ensure that we are able to have something that we have full control over, that we can use to deliver very good experience to our users. So it's been a roller coaster of having to read, and grow. As a for me as a person, I feel that my tech career technically started when I started working on PHP Sandbox, right? I tell people that, right? It's literally started then, and the amount of experience I've gathered, within these years of working on it, has been really, really massive.
All right. Thank you very much for that summation. It's very interesting. I think I can relate to a lot of the gasping and the surprise people would have in trying to use the platform and running into errors and then running to support to come and help them out. etc like that. It can be crazy, and users can be funny at times with the way they are going to explain uh, the errors that they are encountering, etc. So I want to ask an aesthetic question, not necessarily. So typically, developers have preferences. Um, they like to work on dark mode versus light mode, tabs versus spaces, these kind of things. Does PHP Sandbox cater to any of this? Do you answer to the preferences or subjections of developers? Any of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Currently, our default theme is the dark mode, right? I guess that's because our designer likes dark mode. So, but you have the option of switching to light mode if you want to. So if you check on your notebook page, you'd see this icon there, right? Just beside the fork button, right? If you click on it, it toggles to light mode, and boom, you are running on light mode. So for us, the most important thing is to just build something that anybody can use and everybody would want to use. So either dark mode, tabs or spaces, whatever, just come and use it. And build cool stuff with it.
All right. I think we are coming to the end of this conversation. We have learned a lot about the platform itself and how it has been running so far. You have mentioned some of the immediate plans for the platform. Where are you seeing this entire thing going in, let's say, 5 years? 5 years. Let's try 5 years. Well, where do you think we will be in 5 years if we come back to this conversation?
All right. So one of our future goals is that if you have been onboarded in some companies before, you discover that sometimes it takes a full day to get started working on the code base. You know, sometimes you have to sort. In fact, some companies, that is one of the reasons why they give you a working, personal computer, a MacBook or something, right, to reduce the differences in the coding environment that the team members have. And that is because onboarding, using these crude methods is it's time consuming, right? And you hear things like, "Oh, it's working on my laptop. Why is it not working on your own?" Right? Except that we need it to work on production, right? So part of our goals, right, is that we want PHP Sandbox to be used in many companies, and I mean every company that writes PHP. And we are looking at how to make it very easy for them to even onboard, new team members quite easily on PHP using PHP Sandbox, right? You can define your custom templates. You can you can do a whole lot of things. You can imagine, say, something like Code Spaces by GitHub, right? So you can imagine something like that, and a lot of work being done also by Code Sandbox. So you can imagine, things like that. So that's part of our goal. The goal is just to help PHP developers be more productive, right? We only want you to think about writing your code, right? Just think about how to write your code. You don't have to think about how do I set this up? How do I set that up? Right? We don't want you to think about all of that. So in 5 years' time, right, what you would see us doing is building a world-class developer experience right from your browser, right? And in 5 years' time, definitely you would see us on your mobile phones and your tabs as well. And you would also have seen us build a whole lot of developer tools targeted towards the PHP ecosystem, just to help people be more productive. Already, currently, we are working on an IDE for Composer itself, right? We call it Composer UI, and that will be rolled out very soon. If you are following Bosso on Twitter, you would have seen some of the snippet of what has been done already, and it will be rolled out very soon. So you'll see us work on a lot more developer tools. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. One interesting thing I want to ask you is I understand that a lot of this is about the growth of a lot of this is about how the community responds and relates to the development of this project. So, what kind of efforts goes into community development, if there is anything like that? And I know there is a Discord channel, and what else exists?
Yeah, so currently we have a Discord channel, like you said, where we interact with our users. We also have a lot of users message us via our mail, and we have this feedback, box on the platform as well, where users can reach us. But most importantly, our focus is always on building things that help the community, right? So for instance, Play, right, is a platform that is already adopted by many open source creators, right? Many open source creators have adopted Play, saying that it solves some unique problems that are associated with open source for them. It solves this for them. So we also try to engage with the community as much as possible via events and speaking opportunities to speak at conferences and all of those platforms. So we also try to ensure that we identify possible ways that we can come in PHP projects, right, and assist them using PHP Sandbox, right? Even if it's just to improve your documentation, create content for your projects, for your library, and all of that, right? And one of the things we also do is that on our social media handles, right, we share knowledge about PHP. Many times things that people are not so familiar with, right? We try to share knowledge about it and all of that.
Yeah, I follow a lot of the knowledge sharing sessions that you guys have, especially the tidbits that you share, I think weekly. How can you talk to that about the features, each of the features of the platform and how they work, right? Um,
Yeah.
Seems interesting. Very, very nice setup and very, very thorough platform development. All right, very much. Toby, do you have any other submission for us? Something we should know about that we haven't asked you so far?
Do I? No, I don't think so. Not at the moment.
Okay. I think we have shared and discussed about the PHP platform. If anyone is interested in learning more about this, please find Toby on Twitter. Is there any other place they should find you, Toby?
I'm not much of a social media person, but Twitter and LinkedIn sound like good options.
Cool, cool, cool. So find Toby, find Bosun. They are on Twitter. I want to believe if you reach out to them, they would find a way to respond. Um, and yeah, just connect them and learn more about the entire platform that they are building and how you can work with them. It's nice talking to you, Toby. It's been a pleasure learning a lot about the stuff you have been building. Before you depart, can you share with us any book that you're currently reading or something you find interesting that you come across recently that you want to share?
Okay, book. What kind of book?
It doesn't matter. Programming book, general book. Um,
Okay. I think I'll pick a programming book. I'm currently reading Building Data Intensive Applications by, of course, the well-known O'Reilly. And yeah, I
yeah,
mean, saw a lot of things there. You just be like, really interesting. Um, yeah, and so something I discovered recently. Uh, well, I would say one of the things I discovered recently is that many times people that you think uh, many people that you try to impress are probably not thinking about you.
yeah. So
Right.
just focus on
So
what you're doing, right?
exactly. So just live your life, right? And try to ensure that you are doing the best thing you can do, right? The best way you can do it. For example, on PHP Sandbox, we get ton of users that send us feedbacks daily, and sometimes some of those feedbacks are not even, they are not bug reports or something. Some just say, "Wow, thank you for building this. This just built me out. This just did that." And there was, one of those days like that. Someone just said, "Guys, just shut this thing down and go and think about your life." And all of that. And I'm just like, oh, right, really? Yeah, maybe I'll shut it down. I don't know when all our users delete their accounts, But then, yeah, that's something I would say I learned recently. Just be you and do your best and ensure that you are giving the 100% to whatever you're doing.
All right. Thank you very much. That is a nice parting shot from you, Toby. It's been nice having you here. I have learned a lot from your experiences and your funny stories or your battle stories, I should say. They have been very interesting to learn about how the team that you work with has been building something that is used globally around the world. It's amazing what you guys are doing. Thumbs up, honestly, right? It's it's amazing. Another thumbs up. Thank you very much for your time, Toby. um, I think we'll connect much more later and have amazing times to do more discussions. Thank you for joining this session. I hope our audiences, people who are watching now or later, would have gotten to learn one or two things. If you need to learn more about PHP Sandbox, please connect with Toby on Twitter and it would answer some of the questions you may have. Toby, bye for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Rufai.
Yeah, it's nice being here.